Solos coaching has been a lot of fun for me, and I'm really glad you guys have enjoyed some of the videos where we break down certain gameplay elements and talk about the things that we're doing right and wrong in Warzone. And today, whilst I won't be giving you a play-by-play of Solo's gameplay, I want to talk to all of you guys about the biggest mistakes I see solo players make in Warzone and how I as a player tend to capitalize on them. This is a really helpful video for understanding what you're doing wrong in solos and the things that might be letting you down individually. These are really common errors that I think the vast majority of players make, and even myself as somebody who plays regularly does these sometimes fairly often. But having them kind of mentally written down or seeing it out on the screen can really show you just how detrimental some of these things are and greatly improve your solo gameplay. The first big mistake I want to talk about in solos is something I see so many players doing, and it's something that I have to remind myself to stop doing on regular occasions, and that is tunnel vision. And tunnel vision refers to focusing on something exclusively, whether that's a player, a fight, or something else. And I think this is one of the biggest letdowns of every player I see in Warzone solos, where tunnel vision takes over and they lose their gameplay sense. There's two types of tunnel vision I see fairly often in Warzone, and the first one is tunnel vision on a threat, and the second one is tunnel vision on a fight. Now, when you're playing solos, being aware of the threats around you is a huge thing, and it's something to definitely take mental note of. If you know somebody's in a building, if you know somebody's on a rooftop, it's worth knowing that that is the case and mentally having that in your head whenever you make a rotation, make a play, or have a different gunfight. But something I see a lot of people doing is they identify where the threat is, and then they fixate on where that threat is. They don't continue to look around for other threats. They just assume that the one they've already identified is the most pressing. And whilst that can be the case if they are immediately very close to you, look like they're about to make a cross to you, or are looking to aggressively play your position, then for the most part, they are just that. They're a threat that you've identified, and you should continue identifying more. I see lots of people just focusing on the first guy they see, not look around in their general surroundings, and end up being taken out by somebody else. And good solo players know how to capitalize on players who are frozen in corners, frozen looking at something, and just not thinking about their surroundings. The second one, which is one I talk about often, is tunnel vision in fights. I always say to people, if you're going to fight somebody in Warzone, be confident you're going to get that finish or kill, or don't engage at all. Because something I see lots of people do is they fire off their gun at somebody, they three-plate them, that guy gets into cover, that person's then plated, and they continue having this overwhelmingly dragged out fight where nobody's downing the other player, nobody's made the play, made the pick, got the kill, and you just have two lots of tracers flying at each other, two lots of red minimap markers on the map, and all you're doing is attracting attention, focusing exclusively on each other, and not looking around for surrounding threats. Most of you who watch me play solo on stream know that I get the majority of my kills exploiting when two players are fighting one another and not focusing on anybody else. Whether that's just landing on their heads, taking one of their positions, or just making sure that whilst they're shooting the other person, I play aggressive. It's the easiest thing to do in Warzone. So unless you're confident you can get that kill, don't engage. And if you're in a gunfight and it's been a bit of a back and forth, don't be afraid to disengage from that fight or look around for other threats. Chances are that person's not going to move just as much as you're not going to move. And the most problems I see for players is they get stuck in these fights or stuck in these positions where they're looking at somebody or looking into a fight and they just don't do anything else. The next mistake I commonly see is hesitancy. And I see this a lot, especially in endgame circles or late circles, where everybody hesitates to make movement. And I think this is a universal problem in solos, because it appears in solos that the majority of people only move when they feel forced to do so. I actually think some of the better solos players are players who are willing to make movements, transitions, and pushes for certain power positions earlier than other players. And often I find myself making those moves for better positions in Warzone in solos, and regularly finding myself somewhat uncontested. There are definitely lots of situations in Warzone where the best position can also be the most obvious position, which in turn doesn't make it the best position. But I really do feel that the point still stands that general hesitancy in late circles is a huge problem for most players in solo Warzone, and it's something I see more of than less of, and it's something that I feel is the largest problem I see in the game. At the end of the day, winning a solos game is about taking risks, and players who are unwilling to make risks at the end of game circles to try and make a play or try and get into a good position often ends up being the ones who just are stuck at the edge of the zone, stuck in certain locations, and don't make a huge amount of progress. Whether it's a risky smoke push, a risky airstrike push, trying to make a play early for a building, identifying when it's worth trying one of those risks and what the reward could potentially be is always huge. If you know a position could give you a win, it's worth going for it sooner rather than later. This next big mistake is more of a fundamentals problem for solo players. There are two basic assumptions you should always make whenever you go into a solos game. One, if you're fighting somebody, you're going to get third-partied. And two, especially in later circles, you always have to assume that there is going to be somebody in any given building. The first one's really a huge one because I do end up killing lots of players who are just looting the floor of somebody who they've just taken out and they're not looking for the next threat that's going to immediately arrive. If you get a kill in a solos game, somebody is coming for you. It's a guarantee. You're either red on the minimap, or you've made noise, or you've got visible tracers, and suddenly somebody else is on your tail. But the next one, and the one that's big for me, is the assumption that every building is occupied. That is something I fundamentally do in every game of Warzone solos, and unless I can verify with a portable radar or a UAV, or something that lets me know information about my surroundings, you should always assume that there is somebody in any given building. Never go into a building thinking that you have a free pass, and never go into final circle buildings assuming they are unoccupied. 99% of the time, if a building looks good to you, it probably looks good to the rest of the lobby as well. And those two simple assumptions can save you so much pain in Warzone solos, knowing that when you get a kill on somebody, you should actually just take a second, take a breather, get your plates on, and look around for what might be coming for you. And two, knowing that if you're going for those final circle zone pushes, that every building probably has somebody in them. And having things like portable radars and UAVs allow you to make those critical final rotations with better information. The final thing I want to talk about in Warzone solos is something I call audio queuing. Now, audio cues are a huge part of Warzone, whether it's an enemy dropping in, whether it's somebody sliding, whether it's footsteps. These things can determine whether or not you're somebody who gets pounced on or somebody who is doing the pouncing. And it's worth remembering a couple of things about audio cues. The three loudest audio cues in Warzone are breaking glass, sliding, and busting open doors. They can be heard from a building or two away, and those are the three loudest things you can do. I very regularly open doors slowly in Warzone, I very rarely break glass in Warzone, and I only really slide around out in the open away from buildings if I'm trying to avoid being sniped. Sprinting around, tack sprinting around buildings, sliding around buildings, breaking glass around buildings, or busting doors around buildings is a very easy way to make it explicitly clear where you are on the map. You will see me hundreds of times in any given solos game, sitting in a position or being in a location and ADSing and just listening for audio. I don't make audio cues myself. I don't break those doors. I don't bust open those windows. I often ADS walk through things. I often ADS walk when I open doors, and that means that I'm producing the least amount of sound in the game. And most of the people I end up killing are people who don't care about the amount of audio they're producing. It's a huge part of the gameplay dynamic, and making less audible cues, especially around buildings and final circles, is a fantastic way of improving your success rate. So folks, that's about it for this solos video. If you enjoyed this, drop a like, please leave a subscribe as well, and you'll see more of this in the future. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.